Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. Our topic today is how to get organized for a job search. My guest is Dr. Tom Denham from Careers in Transition. We're going to pick it up where we left off before, but now we're going to kind of talk about organization. Welcome back.
It's good to be back. You know, every time we do a show, I should tell the viewers the 3 stages of the career development process. I think that always is a good
start.
Framework. So the 3 stages, and they build on one another, are number 1, self-assessment, number 2, career exploration, and number 3, action plan. So there's one question that goes with each stage. The self-assessment question is, who am I? The career exploration question is, where am I going? And then the last question is, how do I get there? So we're going to talk about the action plan today. The action plan is either you're going back to school, you're doing a job search, or you're starting a business. So today we're going to talk about the job search. But I wanted to frame it this way because there is a lot of prep work that you need to do before you get to the actual job search.
And we could mention we've done, 10 to 12 shows already. At least 9 are up on the internet, so
Yep.
they can go to your website or the library website and find them.
Yes, that's right.
So if you need to learn how to get into LinkedIn, for example,
There's
that's
a little,
up there.
There's a little lesson. There's
Little
a half
lesson.
an hour lesson on LinkedIn.
Okay, so
Yeah.
today, organizing a job search. Where do you start?
Well, you know, the first thing is that let's say somebody gets laid off or downsized or decides that they're ready to do a job search. The very first thing they have to do, let's just pick somebody who is unemployed, for example. The very first thing that they have to do is they have to have a positive attitude, or what I call championship thinking. So let's say it's a Sunday night. You have to decide that tomorrow morning is a work day and that you are going to have a positive attitude. So one of the things that I want to stress is being in routine. So you need to have a standard bedtime routine and a standard wake-up routine. And when you wake up, you have to have that positive attitude. Too many times people are going to bed too late and then they're getting up too late. They're not exercising. They're not having a proper breakfast. They're not getting enough sleep. And so that is starting Monday off wrong, and it's also starting the week off wrong.
It makes a lot of sense. If you're working, you're going to be doing those things because you have to, because you know you're going to be up at 8 o'clock, because otherwise you can't be at work at 9 or 7 or whatever.
That's right. I mean, you should not get distracted by doing house projects or getting up at 9:30 and going to the gym and then having lunch and then doing a little bit of your job search in the afternoon. We call that retirement. Okay? You would, if you had a real job, you would not get up at 9:30 and go to the gym. You would already be at your desk or your place of employment by 9 o'clock. So don't do that when you're doing a job search. You're doing a job search is a full-time job. You should be devoting 40 hours a week to it. I had a client once and I asked, how many hours a week are you doing your job search? And he said, well, about 8. And I said, that's not a job search, that's a hobby.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now, that's not exactly psychological, but I could see people having attitude problems of, gosh, I got laid off, I'm depressed.
Right.
How do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, you have to acknowledge the situation. You have to acknowledge your feelings. There is a degree of loss. Essentially, you got a divorce. And it may or may not be of your choice. So perhaps you've worked for this company for a number of years. Let's say you've worked for this company for 15 years. You've given a lot of time and effort. You've spent more time on the job with these people and your supervisor than you have with your real family. So all of a sudden they come into your office unexpectedly and you think your job is either secure or if you've done a good job and they say we're going in a new direction and we're going to ask you to leave today. It's absolutely devastating. So surrounding yourself with what I call a dream team of people who can support you emotionally, working with a career counselor and working with a therapist if necessary, very important, because a job search can be a very lonely process.
Now you mentioned surrounding yourself with people. Where would you find those? What kind of people are you talking about? Family, or are you talking about?
Could be a combination of family, friends. It could be a spiritual advisor, a career counselor, a therapist, a personal trainer, a financial planner, business colleagues, a trusted friend. You want to have enough people on your dream team so that you're not going to just one person and sucking all the emotional energy out of them. So for example, if you're married and you're just going to your spouse, you're complaining about your job search, you're dumping a lot of your negative feelings, that person is going to get burned out and burned out pretty quickly. And that's why you have to spread out that support network to a number of people where you can get emotional support from. That's right.
I noticed all the people you mentioned would be people thinking about your job and what's good for you. Whereas, I guess the opposite, if you went out with people that maybe you bowled with or rode with or climbed with or drank with, well, they're not going to be thinking about your job. They're out to have a good time when they're out. So you might get into that attitude and kind of get distracted.
Well, again, you're not going to be bowling with people at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You're going to be, hopefully,
right.
You're going to be doing your job search. There has to be a balance between the 40-hour-a-week job search and having some time in the evening and on the weekends. And that's part of organizing your job searches. Don't do your job search in the evenings unless you're going to some kind of networking event. And that could include something through the Chamber of Commerce, or it could include going out with your friends that bowl.
Okay.
And they could be your emotional support network in addition to that close-knit dream team of 10 to 12 people.
So both are important.
Both are very important. People, when you go out, you're going to, let's just pick on bowling. You're going to go out, you're going to get that socialization. We talked about the job searches can be a very lonely process, especially when everyone else has gone to work and you're sitting at home. You are going to get emotional support, but you're also going to use those people for contacts and connections that they may know. There's a rule in networking that everyone knows 200 people. It's the rule of 200. So when you're tapping into all your bowling friends on your bowling team, you're really doing part of your job search. And it's also the physical activity that's very important too.
Okay, so what's the second step? We've dealt with psychology.
We just started on the second step, which is creating structure and schedules.
Okay.
One of the things that I do with my clients is when you work with me, we do a thing called Motivational Monday and Follow-Up Friday. Oftentimes when people are doing a job search, they don't know where to start, they don't know where to begin. And I stress to them that you're running your job search like you were running a business. So imagine you're a solo entrepreneur running a business. You are your brand, you are a product. And so on Monday morning, you've got to set goals for yourself, not only for that day, but for the rest of the week. So what clients will do is they'll call me and they'll say, I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to be doing for my job search this week. And we'll have a conversation, we'll discuss it, and we'll come up with 5 to 10 things that they're going to accomplish. Then I leave them alone for the week, they leave me alone, and then on Friday, they call me and they tell me what got done, what didn't get done, and what roadblocks or hurdles or stumbling obstacles have come in their way that they need to work on, and then they get the weekend for free. They don't do their job search on the weekend, again, unless their kid has a soccer game and there's, all these parents around and they can use it as a...
It's a little like Weight Watchers, actually. I was thinking, you have to tell somebody what you did, so as you go through the week, you're thinking, well, what would Tom think, or what would my priest think, or what would so-and-so think?
Right, and when you set goals on Monday with somebody, or somebody else is keeping you accountable. And they know that they're going to have that follow-up meeting on Friday. Without that, you might go adrift.
Mm-hmm. That's good. And it probably keeps your head in the game a little better.
Right. And again, having a routine, a set bedtime, a set wake-up time, a set exercise time. You have to stay in that kind of routine. If you do not have a standard morning routine, when a lot of the chaos of the day happens, it's hard to stay focused and driven and ambitious when you've started off the day at home chaotically.
It seems like we've covered the first two steps, at least a sketch. Mm-hmm. So what's the next step? Now, what's the concrete step that you do that actually gets you set towards your work?
Well, you know, I try to put myself in the shoes of somebody doing a job search. So I would set aside a special place in my house, a desk, a room, where that is where I am running my business. And my business is me. I am the product, I am the service, I have skills, I have interests, and I'm going to go out into the marketplace and I'm going to sell this kind of thing. So you're a solo entrepreneur, you're going to go to a certain place. I have a third floor in my house, I have a desk up there, so that's where would my job search office be. So I would set up my files, I would have file folders, I would certainly have my phone up there, I would have my to-do list, I might have a calendar up there. So it's almost like it's a command center.
So it seems like if, let's say it's winter and the kids are at school, if you have kids, that's easier. You might have to communicate with everybody around you to make sure that they know this is work time.
Right, that's right. I mean, you should have a family meeting to say this is Dad's new project or this is Mom's new project, and you should really take that kind of attitude that this is like building an addition on your house, and you're the chief contractor on this thing. If you don't take a project management perspective on it, again, you might get distracted by going out, running errands, painting the deck, and certainly
it's easy to do things that are close by that you see.
It's
right?
And doing a job search is not, for most people, is not a whole lot of fun.
No.
So it is so much easier to run out to CVS to get distracted by it or to paint the deck than to focus on sending out resumes, cover letters, looking for job openings, networking, following up, preparing for interviews.
And I was thinking a positive thing about this, as you mentioned sales, and this is your job, and you're the brand, you only have to sell one product.
You have one product.
You're done.
And as we talked about in the beginning of the program, you have to identify what the product is, and we talked about those 3 steps. So you've got to go back to self-assessment and decide what is the product. And then you've got to explore your options, and then you've got to narrow down those options to 3 types of jobs. Your ideal job or your dream job, the job that you really want. Number 2, second place, is the backup job, or the realistic job, or what I would also call the good enough job. And then the third type of job, the third place, bronze medal, is the safety or survival job, or what I also call the rock bottom job. So you have to decide what are those job targets in each of those areas. Now, we will only really be satisfied when we are targeting and landing those ideal and dream jobs. But if after a while you keep banging your head against the wall and you don't get that ideal job, you're going to have to look at what the backup and the safety or survival job.
That makes a lot of sense. So what about frustration? How do you deal with that? When do you know that you've gone too long and you haven't had a success? Because you're going to have rejections.
Right. Well, just for a shameless plug for a career counselor, I have a lot of clients who have been doing their job search for 3, 6, 9 months, sometimes a year, and they've done absolutely all they can do. And they reach a frustration point where they've sent out 25, 50, 75, 100, over 200 resumes, and it's not generating the leads and the interviews and the job offers. That could be a resume problem. If they're not getting the interview, it's either a resume problem, a cover letter problem, or it may be they're hitting the wrong targets, they're not networking enough. If they're getting lots of interviews but not getting offers, it's probably an interview problem.
So you really need to get the feedback of what's working, what's not working, and maybe even try different things.
Right. Spouses and friends and family are there for emotional support. That's what they do, and that's what they do best. But they're not trained career counselors. If you get to a point, 6, 9 months in, and you're feeling down and it's not working, you really need to hire a coach. I tell people, if you can lose weight on your own, that's great. Otherwise, after 3, 6, 9 months of trying, you've really got to hire a personal trainer.
Maybe we have to throw in something about finance here. I mean, if you need to talk to your accountant, so to speak.
Right.
Now, you may be your accountant, but how long can you afford to go for a job, and then when do you fall back and?
Right. That's why organizing your job search is so important, and having that dream team. I mentioned a priest, rabbi, minister, a career counselor, a therapist, and your financial planner. That should be one of the first things that you should think about, because if you're beginning your job search and you're targeting all those ideal jobs where you're going to be the most satisfied, and then all of a sudden 6 months later you have nothing.
Right.
You have to be able to plan for that. A job search today could easily take 6, 9 months or a year.
And what we've
Easily.
been told, I think, from all the talk shows on television, you should have 6 months backup money to finance problems like this. And we're finding right now 9 months might be needed.
So, Susie Orman would say you'd have to have a year.
Okay. Well, that would cover your 9.
Most people that I work with are living paycheck to paycheck.
That's the reality.
That is the reality, is that most people are not saving for retirement. If they did save for retirement, they tap their 401k. People are losing their houses. Their savings are they're absolutely tapped out. Other people have planned ahead and have saved and invest wisely, but that is not the majority.
So, okay, so what's next? What's our next step?
Well, you probably want to design, some kind of filing system. So what I would suggest is you've got those 3 types of jobs: the ideal, the backup, or the realistic, and then you've got the safety or survival job. And so I would categorize the job targets into each one of those categories. I would absolutely.
So you're actually going through them all at the same time.
Right, you're going through your prospect list and you're identifying these jobs. I would probably put it into an Excel spreadsheet. I would put the name of the job, the job title, the employer, location, website, contact person, any networking contacts, and then I would write down when I sent a resume, when I made a follow-up phone call, when I had an interview, notes, and if I got an offer.
I'd keep names, right? Names and phone numbers.
Yes. I would be extremely organized with this. I've had clients come to my office and they bring in just absolute loads of paper. Most of the paper is crinkled up, it's not organized, and I'm asking them for a copy of their resume so I can critique it, and they ruffle through it and they're like, "Oh, I know it's in here somewhere," and it's just an absolute mess. That is a manifestation of what's going on up here. If this is disorganized, the job search is disorganized, and then when you go to an interview, you're coming across as disorganized, and therefore you're not getting the job offer.
And I can see if you start this in the beginning, if you start your record keeping right away when you make your first call, then you're not going a week or a month later. Now, who was that? I guess I need a record keeping system.
Right. That's exactly right. And the other thing about your job search is you have to be disciplined, methodical, and you have to be incremental, which means you need to be doing something every day for your job search. So you have to wake up in the morning and you have to say, what am I going to do today for my job search. What am I going to do this morning? What am I going to do this afternoon? So part of your job in organizing your job search is to stay disciplined and you be your own accountability buddy. Now, I train for mountain climbing, so every day I wake up and I say, what are you going to do to train today? Now, it could be a walk, a run, weightlifting, could be rock climbing, mountain climbing, it could be mountain biking. I've got to do...
You've got to keep in shape.
I've got to keep in shape. You got to be keeping in shape for your job search, too. You can't go 4 days without doing something for your job search, because it's very much like you got to keep something in the hopper. You do something today, and that's not going to yield results for 2 weeks for an interview, that the interview is 3 weeks later, and then you have a second interview, which is another 3 weeks later, and then they wait 2 weeks to give you a job offer. So you've got to constantly have things going on.
This is almost off the topic, but it seems like it might be relevant. How do you keep a person, or what do you tell a person so that they stay in the present when they're making a job call? You know, like I could see 2 different extremes. One, you're overly confident and you go in and you're patronizing, or you're glowing and you expect to get the job, and then you're devastated because you don't. Well, this is a business. The person's evaluating you. It's a two-way street. In a way, you shouldn't even know that you want the job until you've negotiated and given your best and all that. On the other hand, it could be just the opposite, and you could be like, okay, I'm going to call this guy today and he's going to reject me, and now who am I going to call next?
Right. Well, imagine if you were running a business and you were selling apples or widgets. That's the framework that you have to have. You wouldn't go in and say, well, this is an easy customer and I'm just going to sell them 10,000 apples. And you wouldn't also go in and say, oh, this person's not going to buy any apples. I mean, there has to be a balance between humility and confidence. Remember, unfortunately, you are in sales. Some people are comfortable with sales. Many of the clients that I work with are uncomfortable with selling anything, let alone themselves.
Right, which is maybe the hardest?
I think that for many people it is the hardest part of the process. They are not consummate self-promoters. And unfortunately, the self-promoters are the ones that tend to get the interviews and the job offers. They're the go-getters, and they tend to be the hustlers out there.
I think I went back to the psychology a little bit, but you were on the filing system, and we do want to finish that. Anything else you need besides, okay, you've got a spreadsheet, you've got all your jobs, so now that would be, what component would that be? That would be who you've called, but you must also have who you want to call, or how to, do you have different parts of the system?
Well, yeah, I mean, who are you going to call today? The question you should be asking yourself, because networking is the #1 job search strategy, is who am I going to network with today? Now, you might have to place a call on Monday to network with somebody later in the week, or perhaps the following week or the week after that. So you should be going through your Rolodex or your LinkedIn of contacts and connections and be thinking, who can I contact today? Now, some of these people are going to be in your inner circle. That's your closest contacts and connections. You should probably start there first. Then you've got a middle circle of lesser known contacts, and then you've got an outer circle of basically acquaintances.
Okay, and you actually started with that. So we had that part of our filing system right from the beginning, but I'd forgotten. And then the other one was who you've actually called and all the contacts and all those other pieces.
Right. I mean, you could have a filing system of companies and jobs over here, and then you could have another filing system of inner, middle, and outer people.
So your network description.
Right. Again, when you are working, and you come home at the end of the day, that is your sanctuary. That is your castle. That's where you find your rest. But if you're unemployed and you're in the house by yourself and the kids are at school and your spouse or significant other is at work, 5 days a week you're in the house and you're in the house on the weekends, and this goes on for week after week, it's like being under house arrest. And the problem is you're gonna start to go inward. you're going to be a prisoner of all your thoughts. The thoughts are probably going to be negative. They're not going to be positive. That's why getting out of the house every day is so important. If you get out of the house in the morning, let's say you exercise, you go for a run early on, but then you go to a networking function during the day, you're taking somebody out to lunch, you're taking somebody out to coffee in the morning, maybe coffee in the afternoon, you can go back, make your follow-up phone calls, send out your resumes, and quit at 5 o'clock. You've had a good day. But if you let that go and you do some networking on Monday and then you don't do anything until sending out one resume on Friday, that's a recipe for depression.
Now, how would you translate that for somebody who is in the trades? I don't know. I mean, I would imagine salespeople know that there's a chamber and a lot of other groups and speaking groups and different things, but if what you're used to is going to work and working for a company and maybe doing a specific job, how do you translate that into meeting people?
Well, you know, what I found is that people in the trades are really actually pretty good at networking.
Okay.
They usually tend to get those jobs through networking, and then they get, you know, they get laid off, and they're usually calling a buddy.
So they know people already.
Yeah, they tend to be pretty good at that type of thing. What I found is that people in office jobs will get so locked into that environment that they really don't get out and network as much, or they just become complacent.
So it's almost the opposite of what I was thinking.
That's what I've found.
Huh.
You know, and one of the things...
Well, because I guess, yeah, you go into your desk and you do your little job.
You sit in front of a computer. It's an isolating activity. And the other thing I want to touch on, both for the trades and for white-collar jobs, is that you should always be networking, constantly. And usually networking is an afterthought. If you really want to have job security, you should be networking all the time. Now, for some people, networking is just exhausting. They don't want to do it. And networking doesn't have to be, you know, I'm going to take something from you and it's going to be all about me. Networking is really about relationship building. And the people that have the deepest, strongest, broadest relationships will find job security. The ones that haven't networked, that haven't reached out, those are the ones that are in trouble when they get laid off, because that's the time to start networking. I mean, that's the time to pull the trigger on your network.
Right, okay, to
and
start
they
using
haven't built a network. So it's very much like gardening. If you start in the spring and you plant this garden, you're going to have food in the fall that'll take you through winter. But if you reach the fall and go, wow, it's winter around the corner, it's really hard to plant in November.
You're not going to get a series of
You're
crops
not going to get a
in.
harvest. I mean, you can't plant in November and expect to survive through the winter.
Right.
But again, this is something that, you know, we don't really teach you in school. This is something that you have to know and make a priority.
Could you take us through?
Isn't it interesting that everything comes back to networking?
Well, it is an interconnected society, right? Could you take us through, for the person who's not used to the networking, for the person who feels exhausted after making a phone call to their bank to find out, you know, what's wrong with their credit card? Okay, it doesn't have to be that extreme. How do they approach calling someone? Obviously, you don't call up and say, "Do you have a job?"
Right.
But on the other hand, "Hey, how's it going?" might not work either.
Right. Well, you know, one approach is you could start with an email. Then you could make a follow-up phone call. Again, for those that are not comfortable with networking, especially with people that they don't have real strong relationships, is to start networking with the people that they do have the strongest relationships with. Networking can start with one person. Think of one person that you could take out to breakfast, lunch, dinner, or coffee. They are the teacher and you are the student. You are there to ask for help. The number one reason people don't donate to nonprofits,
yeah.
The number one reason why people don't donate to nonprofits is they were never asked. So you have to be in an asking mode. And for many of us, asking is really difficult. We don't like to ask for help, but we're more than happy to help. But what I've found is when you ask, you do receive. So you start with that one person and you start asking. You ask them for career advice. You ask them for tips on your job search.
Things they can give.
Things they can, could you look at my resume? Do you know of 3 companies that I could apply to? Do you know of 3 more people I could have a cup of coffee just like I am today? If you ask for half an hour of their time in person, they'll typically give you an hour. So that's where it begins. It begins with the face-to-face. Less time on Facebook and more face-to-face time.
Right. I mean, you've lectured a bit, and I use lectured in a kind of a quote, but you need to talk to people.
You need to go from
Don't sit at that computer and put your resume into 10,000 sites.
Like I said before, the internet and the computer is an isolating activity. And so it's so important to break out for that. But there's a balance between the high tech, such as LinkedIn, and the high touch, which is the network. So you have to go beyond, if you talk about relationships, there's texting, then there's email, then there's maybe Facebook, then there is a phone call, then there's the in-person meeting. It's really hard to turn somebody down or not help them when they're right in front of you. And you're going to have more in-depth conversations. When you get somebody on the phone, they're going to give you 20 minutes and they're already thinking about how can I get this person off the phone and get onto the tasks at hand that are important to me.
Right. It's just the environment, I think. I feel like I'm not doing anything if I'm talking to somebody on the phone, but if I went out and had coffee with them, you're not going to drink the coffee as if you were a horse that had been running for 6 miles. You're going to sip your coffee and talk.
Yeah, that's right. And we have to get back to talking and real communication.
Right. Have we left out any major steps before we get to?
I don't think so. I think
we've covered a lot of things. One thing that you mentioned to me, how do you know how you're doing?
Well, that's where an accountability buddy can come in. I mean, you chart your progress through a week and through a month and through a quarter. So at the end of the week, ask yourself these important questions. How much time did I devote to my job search? Did you write down on a daily basis how much time you spent on your job search? Add it up for the week. Most people
punch your clock, right?
Exactly. Punch your time card. You'd be surprised how little time you're spending on your job search and how distracted you are by things that are what I call non-revenue producing activities. I mean, when you're going to the bank at 10 o'clock in the morning, that's a non-revenue producing activity.
Right.
Try to do that either in the very morning or at the end of the day or go on Saturday.
So there really is a thinking component that you have to do in order to be able to then better do the face-to-face, the meeting, to bring things to fruition.
You have to be strategic. You have to be self-disciplined. You have to ask yourself, how many hours am I putting into my job search? Is this the best use of my time? How many people have I contacted for future networking? How many interviews have I had? How many resumes have I sent out? At the end of the week, chart how many resumes you've sent out. Chart how many interviews you've had. Then at the end of the month, look and see how you've done.
And there needs to be a balance, right? You need to say, okay, I really haven't done very well in meeting people. I've got to get out more.
I need to do more of that. That's right. But the only way you can figure out how you're doing, how you're progressing, is to actually chart your progress, which means actually these are certain metrics that you want to write down. If by the end of the week you've only sent out 1 resume and you keep doing that each week, by the end of the month you've sent out 4 resumes. That's it. You cannot expect to be generating a lot of interviews if you're just doing that. You may just, you may not even be aware of how much time you're pissing away.
One thing I think that I would like to cover, what about geographic area? How do you, there are a lot of areas where one thing might be fairly saturated. We have a library school in Albany. So it's not necessarily the easiest thing to get a library job in Albany. There's no library school in, I don't know, I'm not going to say, but there's only 6 in the state. So there's a lot of places where they don't have one. So chances are, if you want a job, you have to go somewhere where people are not.
Right. I mean,
But how far do you go, and how do you deal with that part in your planning?
my daughter wants to be a dolphin trainer. There's not a whole lot of
Not
opportunities
not
here in the
Albany.
capital. No, you want to
Thank
be
goodness.
you want to be an astronaut. This is not the place
No.
to do that. So again, it's those three types of jobs that you're looking for: the ideal, the backup, and the safety. You should do your homework on the career field ahead of time. I mean, if you're going to go to library school and your hope is that you're going to get a job here in the capital region, you should do your market research ahead of time to see what the job market
And you may
is like.
be a librarian in Ithaca for
If you're willing to make the
couple years.
sacrifice to do that, maybe you have family commitments that are only going to keep you here in the
so
capital
then
region.
don't do it.
Well, you have to decide. It's up to you whether you're willing to take that kind of gamble. You might be able to get a library job through networking, through your internships, through your field
The
experience.
best people will.
Right, right. I will never tell somebody that they can't do that, but I will also tell them the consequences and the risks of doing something
Right.
like
If
that.
you want to be the best concert pianist, there's only a couple of those.
Right. I mean, again, you should always have a backup plan.
Right.
What I tell my clients is you should have a career focus and you should also have a geographic focus. I mean, if your house is here, you can you can draw a circle around that house, and that's how far you're willing to commute. Are you willing to commute 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour and a half?
You might have a red zone out there, maybe.
Right, yeah. I mean, it could be like, this is the ideal, this is the backup, and this is the largest that I'm willing to do. And then you can identify all the job opportunities. But that also may translate to different cities. So you might say, capital region is my first choice. I'm going to job search in this circle for the next 3 months. That's going to be my focus. That's going to be my primary activity. However, at the end of 3 months, I'm going to look at these 3 to 5 other cities, and I'm going to do my job search there. I may be doing a long-distance job search. So, like what you said is, somebody goes to library school here. For 3 months, they do their job search here. They don't find anything. Then they go outside the area.
And of course, you need to keep alert to anything that opens here, because in some fields there's an opening, and then for a while there's not.
And how do you stay alert to what's open?
You have to understand where jobs are listed, how they're listed, whether they're listed, and you need to have that network, right?
Oh yeah, that was the answer. I wanted you to be the career counselor for a second. Yeah, you'd have to.
Took me a while.
You'd have to be highly networked. So if I was going to library school, I would start networking with the librarians in the area. I would probably join several library associations, and I would go to all of their events. Because I want to be what's called TOMA, top of mind awareness.
Because then you're going to meet a lot of people, a lot of coffee.
That's a lot. It's a lot of coffee. I wrote an article called "Eat and Drink Your Way to Your Next Job," and this is the symbol for job searching. I mean, really, you could again track as part of your organizing your job search. You could track how many cups of coffee you bought that week, and if you only bought one, you're only extending your job search.
And that's expensive.
That's expensive. Now, you don't have to take everyone out to dinner. That's really expensive.
That's what I meant.
But
if you don't buy the coffee, that's expensive because you're spending that time. You're not getting a paycheck.
Right.
That's money that you passed up, but you could have gotten a job.
Yep. Yeah. So coffee is the solution. If I'm thinking about writing a book, and the coffee mug will be on the cover.
Well, cheese has been very popular in one book. Who Moved My Cheese? Remember that one?
Who Bought Me Coffee?
Okay, this was good.
I enjoyed it.
I think we've covered a lot of the aspects, and we'll put it on the internet, and you'll have a link to it. You certainly can.
Can I just have one last?
Of course.
Networking beats not working.
Can I say you're right?
Or organize, or stay highly organized, be disciplined, be structured, stay in routine, pull the trigger, and network your brains out.
Just let it right there. Do that.
Do that.
Okay. And I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, that you tune in again next time, and that you have a great week. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.